Okay, in this video we're going to look at the way that Revit creates and manages views and sheets within its filing system, and how we can create additional views and duplicate views within Revit. So the first thing we need to talk about is the concept of hosting. So within Revit, it's very strong in this idea that objects that you bring in or create within Revit need to be hosted on something else. For example, if we bring a door into our model, Revit requires that door be hosted in a wall. It has to be placed within the wall and the door become joined within Revit, and Revit then knows that there's a door within that wall. So the concept of hosting is spread across the whole of Revit and the whole of modeling, and we need to be aware of objects that need to be hosted within other objects, and Revit can be quite strict about which objects you can host within other objects. So for example, if we bring a skylight into our model, we have to host that skylight in a roof. We can't host it in a floor because clearly skylights don't belong in floors. Doors and windows get hosted in walls because that's where doors and windows live. So Revit is quite structured about the way that things relate to other objects and other categories, and things need to be hosted within the appropriate container or the appropriate host. And again, it comes back to this concept of categories within Revit. We touched on it in a previous video, that objects within Revit get lumped into a category. All walls, for example, are in the wall category, doors are in door category, floors are in a floor category, and Revit keeps a very strong control of what is a floor and what is a roof, because that's the only way we have within Revit to turn objects on and off and to separate objects out from each other. And this concept of hosting also relates to the way views are filed and structured within Revit, and the way that sheets work as well. So if we just look, I've opened up the default architectural template in Revit here, and our project browser, which I, as said before, like to have on the right hand side here, and open it up so I can see more of what's going on. Within our project browser, by default in the template we have 3 floor plans, one level 1, one level 2, and a site plan. If we expand this out, we have 2 ceiling plans, a 3D view, and 4 elevations. Each of these sub-views, or each of these views, is contained within a folder, which in this case has the name of elevations, and that elevations view folder is contained within a bigger folder called the views. I can minimize that view folder there, and all the views will hide, and I can expand them or contract them. On a large project, we will wind up with literally hundreds of views, maybe thousands. So it's worth making sure that your views are organized in a way that's logical, and we can actually get Revit to file these views for us. If we call them floor plans, they will appear in this folder here. We can create a separate folder if we have, for example, a different type of floor plan, a floor finishes plan that we wanted to file somewhere separately. It doesn't have to live in the floor plan section. Revit will create a new section or subsection for it, depending on the information we give Revit, and it will file these things in a logical order. While we're just looking at this, it's worth remembering that these within each folder, so each view within a folder gets filed alphabetically. So you'll notice that east, north, south, and west is the order of the elevations, not the logical north, south, east, west, or north, east, south, west as you'd expect. They are filed alphabetically within that folder. But the folders themselves are not filed alphabetically. We can change the order of those to suit what we need. So just remember that the views are sorted within each folder alphabetically. Underneath our views folder, I'll just collapse that for a second, we have legends. Legends are a specific type of view that we use. So if we have a whole lot of information that we want to create on a view and put it on multiple sheets or multiple drawings, legends are what we use for doing that. These are the only views in Revit where you can actually drag them onto more than one drawing sheet at a time. Every other view that's contained within the views folder can go onto one sheet only, and if we try and put it onto another sheet, Revit will give us an error to say that it's already located on a drawing sheet. So legends we use when we have something that needs to go on multiple sheets. Underneath legends we have schedules and quantities. This is where Revit can generate lists of items for us based on the information we give it, and we can then put those onto drawing sheets. So they're a type of view, but they are a different view. They don't get drawn graphically. They get created using numbers and spreadsheets. But we'll cover those a little bit later on. But they're a different type of view, and they live in a separate category to the main views. And underneath the schedules we have sheets. I'll just pass the sheets by briefly and just remind you that we have families, groups, and Revit links at the bottom of this list. The families are all the items that we've brought into this model or project. They're all listed in here. For example, doors and ceilings and things. Every little subcomponent gets listed in there. Groups are groups we've created within Revit. We'll touch on those later as we create them, but they live there and they're listed separately as well. And we have links at the bottom, which are files that we link in to the main Revit model. These will also be listed at the very bottom here as well. So if we go back up to the Sheets folder and I expand that, you can see by default we have one sheet. The sheet is numbered A101 and it has the name of unnamed. So these two pieces of information when it relates to sheets are stored separately. This is the drawing number, this is the drawing name. And if we double click on that sheet, we open up a typical drawing sheet with a title block. And you'll see, if I zoom on that the A101 is the drawing number and unnamed is what the drawing is called. If I click on the unnamed and I can type in something into there, so I'll call it a title page, you'll see the sheet title block now updates, but also the sheet name has updated. So I can actually rename the sheets in this project browser by changing the information on the sheet. The name of the sheet is a reflection of the name that's on the title block. Similarly, if I change this to A105, that will update the sheet name. So these two pieces of information, the sheet number and the sheet name, directly relate to the naming in the project browser, and we can rename one from the other and they will interrelate with each other. If I right click on that sheet while it's in the project browser and I click on rename, I get those two items there. One is the number, the sheet number, and one is the sheet title. Again, if I change them within this box, it updates the title of the sheet in the project browser, but also updates the actual sheet itself. So in the title block, this piece of text is pulling the name of the sheet and putting it graphically for us to see, and the sheet number graphically for us to see as well. And that's done within the title block. So we'll cover title blocks a little bit later, where we actually modify a title block, see how they're built, and get you to create your own. But be aware that the sheet name information here is attached to the sheet itself, the view if you like, and that information can then be drawn out of the view and put into the title block. But we can rename sheets either from the project browser or from the sheet itself, and the two will update and link together. That means if we have a lot of sheets here and need to rename them quickly, we can actually go through them in the project browser and rename them. We don't have to open up every single sheet to change its name. It may actually be quicker to do individual sheets one at a time. There is actually a third way to name sheets in a very quick manner, and we'll cover that later on. So these are sheets, and by default in this template we have one sheet with one title block. Just while I'm in here, I'll touch on how the title blocks work. If I'm in that sheet and I look at the properties browser, as I've covered before, the properties browser will tell you the information about, or the properties box will give the information about the view I'm in or the object that I have selected. If I have no object selected, that box will tell me the information about the view that I am in. And if we look, given that I am in the view that contains a sheet or is a sheet, if we look down the information in the properties box, you'll see that the word floor plan appears here under the sheet name, and A105 is under the sheet number. Again, if I change that to 106 in the properties box, hit tab, the sheet number on the title block is now updated, and the sheet name is updated as well. So all of these things interrelate and link together. But this view, this sheet view here, these properties relate to the sheet view because I have nothing selected. The title block, as you see if I hover over the title block, it can highlight that is an object within the sheet and it is attached to the sheet. This is how we can draw the information out of the sheet properties and put them in the title block. But if I click on the title block, you'll see two things happened. One, my ribbon changed to the modify ribbon. It generally does this when you click on an object in Revit. It will change the ribbon to suit the workflow that you need to access next. But also the properties box changed to give me the information about the title block itself. So the title block is a family. Again, we touched on families just before. These are components you bring into Revit that you create outside of the normal Revit framework that you use in your projects. So a title block is a type of family. So already we're looking at families and how they work within Revit. This title block up in the top of the properties box has a title. It's called title block A2 metric New Zealand type 1, and we have the information underneath that that is contained within the title block. Again, we have the sheet name here, we have the sheet number, we've got the issue date, we can put who approved it, and if we change the sheet number in here, again, it will update the title block, it will update the project browser, and if we click away and get back to the sheet view, it updates the sheet number on the sheet view itself. So this is how title blocks work. If you want to change the title block, or you want to change any item within Revit that you have selected, if you look at the name of the object that you have selected, or the type of the object, this is called a type, and you'll see there's a little drop down arrow next to it. If you click on that drop down arrow, you get a selection of the available types of objects within the category of title blocks. So currently we don't actually have any other than this, just one here, and that's because we're in an A2 sheet and the only A2 title block we have is the one that we have accessed at the moment. The size of the sheet and the size of the title block are linked together. So we can only put A2 title blocks onto A2 sheets, and Revit knows that this is an A2 sheet. If I open and expand my views, currently I have a floor plan. Again, the sheet itself gets its own tab at the top here, so we can actually flick between the view for level 1 floor plan and the sheet for the floor plan. If I'm wanting to put this view on my sheet, all I have to do is go to the sheet view itself, find the floor plan in the project browser, and drag it across onto the sheet. Simple as that. So that view now lives on the sheet. So if I draw a wall on that view, my floor plan, then now drop that onto the sheet. If I go back to the sheet view itself, that wall now appears on the view on the sheet. So anything I do to the view is updated on the sheet as well. If I want to actually edit the view directly on the sheet, I can double click. So you can see when I hover in the view, we get a dark outline. If I double click in the view itself, I'm now accessing the view. The title block's gone grey, and I'm now directly accessing the view the same as I would if I was looking at this view here, but I'm doing it within the sheet. So again, I can make changes to the objects in the view, and those are replicated in the view itself. If I want to get out of the view editing side of the sheet, I just double click out in the space somewhere, and I'm back to the main view of the sheet where I can access the title block and drag the whole view around or modify the view as a whole without editing the information in the view. So once I've got a view on a sheet, I can drag it around and I can change the size of it. So that's how we drag views onto sheets and how sheets are different to views. Views don't have title block information, they don't have sheet information. The sheets are filed in a category of their own that's called sheets, and the views are completely different to that and completely separate. But the way that our view looks is the way that it will look on the sheet. We don't have any intermediary step of a drawing view and then a view set up and then onto the sheet. The view itself that we're working in is as it appears on the sheet. So if I delete that wall there, so how do we create new views? In the ribbon at the very top, we have the View tab. I have moved these tabs around to illustrate a point in the last video. So these tabs may not be in the same order as your tabs on your ribbon, but the names are still the same. So if you find the View tab and open that up, You'll see in the middle, right in the middle here, we have plan views and a drop down menu, and we can drop down. We've got 5 different types of plan view that we can create from this location. So we can create views from anywhere as long as we've got access to the ribbon, and we can either create floor plans, reflected ceiling plans, structural plans, a plan region and area plans. Predominantly we're working with the first 2, but mostly the floor plans. So we can create a floor plan from here. If you hover over it long enough, it tells you an explanation of how to create a floor plan, but this is where we create new floor plans. If I click on floor plan, we get a little dialog box that pops up, and this is where hosting becomes relevant. So we've got a new floor plan in the box. Type, we can edit the type. We want to create a floor plan, we've already said that. And it's then underneath asking us to select one or more levels for which you want to create new views. Floor plans in Revit get created attached to floor levels. So if I cancel out of that for a second and I open up one of my elevations, you can see within this view we've got a grid line. This is grid line 1, and we have 2 floor levels. We have level 1 and level 2. Again, these are default in the template, and they're set at the height that they're set by default. But it's not a coincidence that level 1 floor plan shares its name with level 1 floor level, and level 2 floor plan relates to level 2 floor level. And similarly, the 2 ceiling plans, level 1 and level 2, also relate to the relevant named floor level. So level 1 view will show me the view looking down on the level 1 floor level. Level 2 plan will show me the view looking down on the level 2 floor level. So the views effectively are hosted by the level itself. If I want to generate another floor level for my building, the quickest way to do that is to hold down Control. Anything in Revit, if you select the object, hold down Control and drag the object up or sideways or around, it will duplicate the object. So we just created a new floor level. It's called level 3. And the height doesn't really matter, but we've created a new floor level. You'll see we don't have a floor plan that relates to that level. So if I wanted to create a new floor plan that shows me that floor level, I'd click on Plan Views, Floor Plans, and you'll see now the box has changed slightly. We've still got a floor plan as our type, but we now have the option to host that view on level 3. If I click OK, you'll also note, just before we click away from here, that at the bottom of the box is a Do Not Duplicate Existing Views tick box. This is why we can't see the existing floor levels that already have views associated with them, because we're telling Revit that we only want one view per floor level. I'll explain that a little bit clearer in a second. So at the moment we're going to host our new floor plan on level 3 floor level, and I click OK. It opens that for me, and I'm now looking at level 3. There's a floor plan in my tabs. Over here on the project browser we have a level 3 floor plan, and this floor plan is looking at level 3 floor level. So if I go back to my elevation, the view that we're looking at for level 3 is looking down from above level 3 floor level at the floor level itself. The level 2 floor plan is looking down towards level 2 floor level, and level 1 is looking down on level 1 floor level. Now if I go back to my plan views and I want to create a new floor plan, but I don't want to create a new floor level to go with it, if I untick that box at the bottom, I'll now see 3 available floor levels that I can attach a new floor plan to. So say for whatever reason I actually want to create another level 1 floor plan, but for a different purpose. The main floor plan that I've already got I'm going to use for the overall layout, but this floor plan I'm just going to use for the bathroom layout of my building. So I can create another floor plan attached to any of these 3 levels that I want, and I just click OK once I've got this level selected, and it creates another floor plan. It's numbered it randomly because I've hosted it on level 1. It's just done that with the number 1 at the end in brackets, but I can rename that view to anything I want. If I right click in the project browser, go down to rename, I can call that Say it was a bathroom plan. I can call it anything I want. But it is still hosted or still attached to floor level 1, being this floor level here. If I open up that view again and I have my bathroom plan open and I look in the properties over here, I can see about halfway down there's a little grey box and it says associated level 1. This floor plan that I have currently, which is what properties relate to, is hosted or associated with level 1. I can't unbind that. Once I've set it, it is permanently associated with that floor level. So in practical terms, let's see what difference that makes. I'm going to create a series of quick pieces of floor in random locations, and you'll see how the different views show the different pieces of floor on each floor level. So I'm currently in level 1. When I draw a floor in floor level 1, floor plan level 1, the hosted floor level is level 1. So when I draw a piece of floor, it automatically goes onto the floor level that I am associating with that view. So that view is hosted on level 1 floor level, and anything I draw in that floor plan gets hosted on that same floor level. So if I draw a piece of floor and I go back to my, in fact, let's go to a 3D view. We can see we have this piece of floor here. This piece of floor is on level 1. By default, the top of it sits on floor level 1 because I drew it in floor plan associated with level 1. If I go to my bathroom plan, I can see that piece of floor level. If I go to my level 1 floor plan, I can see that piece of floor as well. Bathroom plan that I created just before is associated with level 1. If I go down to its properties, it has an associated level of level 1. And if I draw a piece of floor in that view, click OK, that piece of floor level or piece of floor will sit on level 1. It by default will host on level 1 because the view is associated with level 1. If I go to level 2 plan, I can see the pieces of floor underneath because I'm looking down through the building. If I look at the properties for level 2 floor plan, you'll see that it's associated with level 2. Anything I draw in this level 2 floor plan will host on level 2 floor level. Again, if I draw a piece of floor and I draw it in this direction, this is the level 2 floor plan. I can see the floor because it is hosted on level 2 floor level. If I go to my 3D view, we'll see that this piece of floor that I just drew is attached or hosted on level 2 floor level, and I've now got 2 floor levels within my building. If I go back to my level 1 floor plan, which shows me what's on level 1, I can't see the floor level above. I can't see the pieces of floor that I have on the level above because they're not visible. I'm looking down onto level 1 floor level, and this is the level 1 floor plan. If I go to level 2 floor plan, I can see and access that piece of floor, but I can't access the pieces of floor on level 1 because again this view is attached or associated with level 2 floor level, and everything within this view is deemed to be within the level 2 floor level itself. If I click on my level 3 floor level plan and I again create a piece of floor, that piece of floor is hosted on the level 3 floor level and visible in the level 3 floor plan. Because this level 3 view that I'm looking at, level 3 floor plan, is associated with the level 3 floor level. Again, if I go back to my elevation, I've now got these 3 floor levels, each with a piece of floor on them, and each drawn in a separate view because the view I drew it in related to the floor level that it was attached to or associated with. So if you're working in a multi-story building and you're working on a level 2 floor plan and you're drawing walls, those walls will only host on the level 2 floor level. You can't accidentally put them on the wrong floor level because the view is attached to the floor level itself and everything will be hosted on it. If I go back to my level 1 floor plan and I decide to draw a wall, probably guessed already that that wall will host on the floor level associated with the view that I'm in, which is level 1. So if I go back to my 3D view, I can now see I've created a piece of wall, and that piece of wall is sitting on the piece of floor that I created because they both share the same floor level and it is attached to that floor level for level 1. So this is the way that Revit controls what's available in different views. There is nothing to stop me making that wall really tall, and I can actually now see it on my other floor levels. It's poking through the floors. But the wall is not hosted on level 2 or level 3. It is still hosted on the level 1 floor level, and that's where the information relating to that wall is located. So hopefully that explains the way that Revit hosts objects and views on floor levels, especially floor plans, and the way that when you draw or construct a model within a floor plan, you are constructing it on the floor level that is associated with that view, and you can't change that association. But we can also create multiple views of the same floor level. For example, I have my bathroom plan, which is essentially the same associated level, level 1, as this level 1 floor plan, and will show essentially the same things. But you may notice that the view is slightly different. Our elevation markers are different sizes, our grids look a bit different. This is what we covered in a previous video to do with the view and visibility of the view. These are view by view tweaks that we can make along the bottom here. We can change the scale, all those kinds of things, and they relate to the view that we're in currently and don't affect any other view. So my level 1 floor plan, which shows these two pieces of floor and a wall, is set to 1 to 50. My bathroom plan was created at 1 to 100, so it looks slightly different. I can change that back to 1 to 50, and now effectively the two views, the level 1 floor plan and the bathroom plan, will look pretty much identical. Okay, it's changed in a different detail level as well. So we can change the way, we can create multiple views of things, we can duplicate views within Revit and have them all look different independently from each other. But the floor plans are hosted on the floor level, and it's a fundamental concept to do with the way that views are created and hosted. Another quick way to duplicate a view is if I just right click on a view, I can duplicate that view. I can either duplicate it simply, I can duplicate it with all the notes and text attached, or I can duplicate it in a way that makes it a dependent of my current view. If you want to just quickly duplicate a view for a floor plan, if you duplicate view and click on duplicate, you'll get a second view. It's called level 1 copy because I just duplicated level 1, and I can rename that. But it duplicates the view with the same settings as it had in the original. So these two views now are identical, and they both host on the level 1 floor level. Because if I again go select that copy, look at its properties, it is associated with level 1. So once you've created floor plans for each floor level, you can create multiple floor plans for each floor level for different parts or different types of drawings by just duplicating the view without creating a new floor level. So hopefully that explains the way floor levels work, floor plans work, and how they relate together. It will become clearer as you use Revit more often, but it is a fundamental thing to understand that when you're working on a floor plan, you are working on the floor level that's associated with it, and everything you draw relates to that floor level. If we wish to create a section view or an elevation view, we can do that again in the View tab up here. You can see we have a section icon with section tool and an elevation one. I don't know why the elevation tool icon is smaller than the section one and why the plan view one is smaller than the section one. This is just the way they're laid out, and it is one of the confusing things about the ribbon is that different icons that seem to do very similar jobs and have similar importance get assigned different sizes. So if I want to create a new elevation within Revit, I've already got 4 elevations. I use the elevation tool to do that. What I'll do first is I'll actually delete the existing elevations that I've got. Now, let's just talk about these elevation markers for a second. I talked about it previously. They're made up of 2 parts. One is the circle with the elevations attached, and this little black triangle is the elevation view itself. If I want to open the elevation from here, I can just double click on that black triangle and it will take me direct there. You can see I've selected the elevation triangle. The properties in the properties box relate to the view of the elevation itself. And if I zoom out, there's a line here that represents where the elevation is looking and the cut plane that it's using. If I delete that elevation marker, it'll give me a warning. The warning says view elevation east will be deleted. The view that is associated with that elevation will be deleted with the marker as well. So by deleting the marker, I'm actually deleting the view. The two are very closely linked and they are effectively the same object. So if I don't want to do that, I just hit cancel. But if I want to delete that east elevation, go down to delete, gives me the warning, I click OK. 2 things happen. One, the little black triangle disappeared off the elevation marker, and the view associated with it, which was east elevation, has disappeared from our project browser. It's gone. We've deleted it. If it was on a sheet, it would have disappeared off the sheet at the same time. So we've just deleted a view from Revit. We can do the same thing by right-clicking on the view name in our project browser, delete, and we can delete the views that way. And you'll see, if I zoom out, this was the elevation that I just deleted. It was attached to the circle. The actual marker has disappeared as well. If I click on the circle that represents the elevations and I delete that, it'll just disappear. It's purely a marker or an object that holds the elevation views in place. So let's just delete our existing elevations. We can hold down Control to select more than one view, and then right click and delete. And we'll delete these little markers at the same time. Again, if we hold down Control, we can select more than one object, hit delete, and they're gone. So we've now got no, get rid of that one. We've now got no elevations in our project, and you'll see the folder that contained the elevations has disappeared as well. If we don't have a view called elevations, the project browser doesn't have a folder called elevations. So let's create some new elevations. Depending on how you want the elevations to look, we can create them in a slightly different way. But let's start by clicking on the elevation button. You'll see the tab changes. We're now in the modify elevation tab, and we have all the modify tools. And if I hover over the drawing area, you'll see I've got a little circle with an arrow to the left of it at the moment, and this represents the elevation and where we're going to locate our elevations. Revit will try and point the arrow on that circle at the object that it thinks you want to elevate. So if I go over here, you'll see the arrows on the left hand side of the circle. If I move it over here and go close to the floor, or actually close to the wall, Revit thinks I want to elevate the wall, so it's actually pointing that marker at right angles to the wall itself. If I drag it further out, it just can't find any object nearby, so it will automatically default to the left hand side. If I had a wall that was vertical on the screen, it would create the elevation marker pointing at the wall, perpendicular to it. So it tries to predict what you want to elevate as you're moving this little tool around. If I just click randomly out here, we've now created an elevation, but the tool is still active. We've still got this little icon underneath our cursor, so we can actually drop more elevation markers around on our drawing. When we're done dropping elevations, we just hit escape to get out of that tool, and we're back to the normal cursor. You'll notice in the project browser, we've just created 4 elevations. These are the 4 elevations here. These are little black triangles, and we've created 4 of them. If I wanted to delete 3 of the ones we just created, and get rid of the circles that go with them. There's another way that we can create 4 elevations quickly. Say for example we wanted these elevations to actually be within the middle of our building, and we want to elevate outwards from that single central point. If I click on that circle again, you might notice that there are 4 white arrows around, sorry, 3 white arrows around this side of the circle and 1 black one on the left hand side. The black one has a tick in this box, and they all have question marks and various other things. So I've created an elevation which is, if I click away and click the elevation marker itself, I've created this elevation here. I can drag that to where I want it. But I can actually create 3 more elevations off that same central circle just by clicking and ticking these boxes. And that will now create 4 elevations that point outwards from that single circle in the middle. So if you've got an internal set of elevations that you want to create, you can create them around a single circle. But generally for external elevations, you will have a series of elevations that are independent from each other, located in different parts of the drawing. So I just untick that. Again, I'm unticking these things. It's telling me I'm going to delete them because the view is associated with that little black marker. So I've now got 1 elevation. It's this one here. I can see what it's doing. When I click on the elevation marker, this blue line represents, as I said, the cut plane for the elevation, and this box, this dotted box, shows me the view of what I can see in that elevation. As I said before, the quickest way to actually open an elevation is to double click on the black box or the black triangle. If I do that, it opens the view of the elevation, and as I covered previously on crop boxes, we have a crop box around the elevation. This crop box relates in size to the view in this dash box here. It's the same width, and the length of this line here relates to the width of my crop box. If I make my crop box bigger for my elevation line gets longer. The two relate to each other. At the moment you can see, according to the floor plan here with this box, I can't see the floor slab here because it's beyond the end of my elevation. If I go into the elevation, I can't see it. Bear in mind I'm on level 1 at the moment. This is my floor level. So this piece of slab here is on level 1, and the one behind me is also on level 1. If I expand the area of the box that's included in my elevation view and go back to my elevation, I can now see the wall and the floor that are within that box. We can create as many elevations as you want, and they all get filed down in here. It's worth remembering that you need to manually name the elevations for what they are, and that's the only way you can really keep track of what elevations are what. So that's how we create elevations within Revit. Again, I'll just show you that by default it tries to create elevations that relate to objects nearby. I've just created 2 walls, and if I go to my elevation icon again and I go near to those walls, it tries to line the elevation up with whatever the object is that's nearby that I might want to look at. And say these walls are vertical and horizontal, this one's on an angle. It's trying to line the elevation up to look at the wall that's nearby. If you find that you've created an elevation and it doesn't align with the wall you want it to, you have to manually rotate the elevation to suit your view. We'll cover that a little bit later. So that's how we create elevations. If I click on the triangle, sorry, on the circle that relates to the elevation, I can drag the elevation around and put it somewhere else. All I'm doing is moving the marker. The elevation line itself stays where I put it, despite the fact that I've moved the elevation marker around. So the elevation marker is tied to the elevation, but the actual graphical representation of it is not. I can drag the circle around anywhere I like, and the elevation line, the cut line, and the area that it shows will still be the same. So that's how we create elevations within Revit. Again, if you click on the black triangle, this line here, the cut plane, is where the view is hosted. It's where the view is attached. Wherever I move that to is where the view for the elevation starts and looks in the direction of this dashed box. So if we now move on to sections, sections are relatively simple in comparison and similar in some ways. If I click on the section tool up here, the ribbon changes. We're now in the modify portion of the ribbon, tab of the ribbon, and our cursor's changed to a crosshairs. All Revit wants us to do now is draw a line to represent where the section goes, and it will then create that section. You'll see in our project browser at the moment we have no sections created. There's nothing called section in here. If I just create a section, and I can draw this line at any angle, so I'll start that again. So you click at the start of the section line, and then you click at the end of where you want the section line to finish, but the section line can be on any angle of rotation. If we draw a nice simple vertical one, we click again and it creates the section. The section, you might notice, looks similar to the elevation. It has this dash box around it that allows us to see graphically what's visible within that section if we opened it up, and we can adjust the size of that section. The slight difference here is we have little grab handles on the edges of our box, so we can make the box bigger without changing the size of the section line itself. So even though our section is now shorter, the line that represents that section that we use to draw it is the same size. If I click away, you'll notice in the project browser we now have a sections category folder. I can expand that and our section is in there. We can name that manually to whatever we want, either within the project browser or by clicking on the section line itself and changing its name, which is down here. By default, Revit will draw the section line with one head and one tail. The tail's this end. If we were to change that, if we click on the section line itself, you'll see there is little circular rotating arrows at the top and bottom. If we click on that at each end, it will cycle through the options for the way that the line finishes. So for example, at the moment that's a head with the arrow indicating the direction of the section, and eventually it'll have the information about the sheet that it relates to. If we click on that circular arrow, we get a tail next. If we click on it again, we get nothing, and we click on it again, we go back to a head. So if we want heads at both ends of our sections, we just have to click on this circular symbol down here until we get the head, and we can have two heads on our section. Again, the quickest way to open that section is to double click on the black arrow that represents the section line itself, not on the section line, but on the black arrow, and that will open the view that relates to the section. We can create as many sections as you want within Revit, and we can use them on sheets, or we can just use them purely as a working drawing for referencing. So we'll go back to our floor plan. The other thing I will point out with sections is that in the middle of the section line there is a little squiggly line. If you don't want the section line to be solid all the way along its length, if you select the section line, click on that little squiggle, that little break line, and it will split the line into two. It hasn't affected the view, it's just the graphic way that it's shown is changed. And again, as I've pointed out before, we get these little blue dots, these control dots. If we click and drag one of those dots, we can change where the ends of that line sit, and we can change the way that our section looks. And again, if we wanted to, we can duplicate the section without drawing a new one. We just right click on it, duplicate the view, and we can do that. And it will create a duplicate, exact duplicate of that sectional view, and it will look exactly the same as this. And we can give it a new name, and we can modify it. And we can change on the view by view basis what that view looks like. So we might want one section that shows the structure and one section that doesn't show the structure. We can just duplicate the view and turn categories on and off within that view, and I'll show you that at a later date. And we can have the two sections be identical but at the same time look quite different. The last thing I'll point out is that the high level folders that Revit uses to create these names here, like this one is a section, building section, that's elevations, building elevation, they relate, and again I'm in the view of the section itself, so the properties box is telling me the information about the view. You can see that that's the same name that's up here. Section building section is the main folder that it's put this view into by default. The name underneath it is what we call the section, and it doesn't affect the way it's filed other than all the sections get filed alphabetically. But the name that the folder takes that these sections go into is related to the type of section that we've used. We can change the type of section or create new sections if we want to. And again, the properties box at the top is telling us the type of view we're using. We're using a section, building section, and in the project browser it gets filed in the section building section folder. If we drop this menu down here, which allows us to change the type of object that we have selected, at the moment we have the view selected, we'll see that there's actually a couple of other options for sections. So to illustrate this, let's go back to this. I'm just going to, again, if you hold down Control and drag an object, it duplicates it. I've now created a second section. You can see over in the project browser I've got two sections and they're located in different places. They look pretty much the same, but I've just copied one and moved it. But they're both section building sections in type. If I change one of them to a wall section, you can see graphically it's changed slightly. The black arrow's gone white. That's just the way that the graphic view is set up for that type of section. But you'll also notice in my project browser I've got two folders of sections. One is sections building section and one is section wall section. So this one here that I got, that I've just changed to a wall section, lives in its own folder, and that name of the folder is dictated by the type of section that I've used. So you can have multiple sections that represent different things, and you can file them in a way that allows Revit to keep them separate and for you to be able to see them. But you need to set up the elevation or the section type differently so that it is a completely different type of section. We'll again go into detail on that later, but just be aware that the filing system over in the project browser is dictated to by the type of object or view that you're creating. So this view here is a wall section view. It gets its own subfolder. The building section view gets a separate subfolder, and the two do not mix together. If we need to create new sheets, we've discussed the fact we've got a default single sheet in here. We can change its name, etc. If we need to create a new sheet in Revit, it would be easy if we just right click on the name of the sheet and go to duplicate, and we can have that option, but we don't. Revit won't let us duplicate that sheet. We have to create a new sheet by right clicking on the word sheets all and click on new sheet. Now when we do that, we get this little pop-up box and we get the option of which title blocks we want to use for our sheet, and we can place a placeholder sheet there if we want to. But this allows us, if we've got multiple A2 title blocks, we can change the title block for that sheet and pick the one we want as we create the sheet. But if we leave those as default and we click on OK, Revit will generate a new sheet. It will give it a number, sheet number that relates to the previous sheet. It will sequentially number these and give it an unnamed sheet name. So we can just duplicate or create new sheets in a similar manner and then rename them and go through them and rename them and renumber the sheets as we want. But once we've got more than one sheet available, I'll show you what happens if you try and put a view onto more than one sheet. So at the moment, we've got our floor plan on here. I'm just going to drag this elevation here onto the sheet as well. Drop that there somewhere. You notice when I drag it on and click, or release, sorry, it then allows me to still position the view within the sheet. So I'll do that again just so you can see. If I drag the elevation across and drop it, it's released the view into the sheet, but I can still move my cursor around without clicking, and then click when I want to position the view in the location that I want it. So it's kind of a two-stage process of dragging the sheet into the view into the sheet and then positioning it and clicking it. So we've now got a view poorly laid out on our sheet, but we've got that elevation view. What I'll also point out is you'll notice that the floor plan here has a little plus next to it. I can expand that floor plan and it shows me the two views that are on that sheet. I can actually double click on either of those two views and access the view directly from this location. So if you've got a sheet with lots of different views on it, you can actually access each of those views by double clicking on the name of the view once you've expanded the floor plan sheet view in the project browser. You'll notice the other two views don't have a plus next to them. They've got no views on them at the moment, so we can't expand those. So I've got this elevation on my sheet. It's located here. If I try and open another sheet and I grab that same elevation and I try and drag it on there, Revit tells me I can't do that. You can only put one view or one copy of a view onto a sheet. Once you've placed a view onto a sheet, Revit will not let you do that again. The only way around this is to duplicate the view like this, duplicate the elevation, create another elevation, go back to my sheet, and I can now drop the duplicate elevation on here. It's a fundamental restriction within Revit that you can't put views on more than one sheet at any one time, except for legends, which I've kind of touched on, but we will go into detail more later. So hopefully that clears up how we create sheets within Revit and views within Revit, and some of the limitations that Revit puts on us for our own good and to allow the project to be structured properly and clearly and keep things in the right place.